Njabelo Nzuza says the proposed amendments to the Citizenship, Refugees, and Immigration Act are designed to modernize and streamline the country's immigration system, making it more efficient, secure, and responsive to current challenges. According to him, the reforms aim to close legal gaps that have made it difficult to manage migration effectively, while also reducing backlogs in processing permits, asylum applications, and citizenship requests.
This particular white paper and these developments. Good morning, Deputy Minister. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it. Cabinet's describing this as one of the most far-reaching reforms of South Africa's immigration system. So just share with our viewers what problem this white paper is ultimately trying to fix.
Well, look, this is a very important reform. Firstly, let me start just by appreciating your invite and also good morning to the viewers at home. The white paper on citizenship, immigration, and asylum seeker and refugee management is very important. Firstly, it overhauls what were different pieces of legislation, where you had the Citizenship Act allocated alone, where you had refugee protection and asylum seeker allocated alone, immigration laws allocated alone. And you will often find conflict in terms of how you operate in the environment. Now we're bringing everything together to one piece of legislation that will regulate all. Now what is important about it is that this legislation comes years or more than 30 years after our 1994 breakthrough, where you had not much experience in terms of how the global environment operates. Now we're very clear on how the global environment operates and what are the threats that come with your open-ended kind of legislation. So we're pushing these reforms. Indeed, they are far-reaching. They make space for digital transformative agenda that we have as a department. But most importantly, it creates a safe and secure environment so that we attract the skills that we need into the country and promote regular migration of people and make it impossible for people to abuse our laws to enter the country illegally and continue to stay in the country illegally using various aspects of the laws. So those are being tightened up now.
And we'll talk about that digital development insofar as the electronic travel authorization system is concerned. I want to go back to the core objective of the white paper. It places a person's economic contribution at the heart of migration or immigration decisions. How exactly does the point-based system work in practice?
Well, that one is mainly for citizenship. We're now using a merit-based economic pathway to citizenship, which means that we look at the skills that a person is bringing. We're looking at qualifications that the people are bringing, the economic contribution in as far as financial investments, as well as social contributions. Now, previously, what you will have is that you will have a year-based progression system where a person will say, I've stayed for so many years in the country, and as such, I deserve citizenship. Now, we're no longer going to be looking at the years. We're looking at contribution. Is what you are contributing positive to the country? Are you, as a person, going to be contributing positively? How have you been contributing before? So it's no longer going to be just a blanket approach. We look at each and every citizen, each and every person on their contribution. Unlike saying, well, you've been here for so many number of years, but it's about contribution. Yes, we are going to be having a non-economic pathways to citizenship as well, which is also on the risk-based approach, which means that we'll now be allocating points for certain skills. We allocate points. How are you contributing? We allocate points, which then gives us, at the end of the day, a total citizen that contributes to our own development. One of the things that we're looking at in terms of citizenship pathways is to open a window, because currently, right now, people, you find that they apply at each and every day for certain visa, for certain PR, for certain citizenship, which means that you have an unending basis of applications. Whereas if you are able to collect applications between a certain periods of time, you are then able to adjudicate properly on them. We're also going to be introducing people who are going to be looking at the citizenship boards, who are citizen advisory panel. Those people will also be able to advise the department on the kind of people that we must bring in.
Out of interest, which are the highest scoring, skills and points that you can get in the system?
Yeah, well, those ones will differ. It depends on the current stage in the country. For instance, right now, you need a lot of engineers, you need a lot of AI technicians, and so on. So we work with the Department of Higher Education and Training to tell us which skills at a given period are amongst the high ranking, because it's not a consistent issue. As skills become short, when there's a shortage of skills, you find that we get skills from outside, and subsequently those skills are then distributed to South Africans as well. So what you might have as a rare skill today, in about a year or so, you will find that South Africa will have accumulated those particular skills and qualifications. So they change on the basis of the skills base that we have as a country. So we look at the skills that we need at that particular time.
Very, very interesting. At the beginning, you talked about essentially harmonizing all of the categories of people who are seeking entry into South Africa. And along with the category that we've now been discussing, there would also be refugees or economic migrants or asylum seekers. Talk to us about how the system works together then to ensure that those individuals are dealt with the criteria that applies to them, and whether there are any new criteria that applies to those who are seeking refuge or asylum in South Africa.
Well, currently what you have is really an abuse of our asylum seeker and refugee protection laws, where you firstly have a person who will cross quite a number of countries and then want to declare South Africa as a first safe country. So this white paper then introduces and internalizes and make it law that a person who enters the country will be conditionally admitted into the country, so that it does not become automatic that when you say you are seeking asylum, then you must be admitted to the country. Then we'll look at the issue. Is South Africa your first safe country, which is there within the United Nations conventions? All that we're doing now is that we're bringing it in and internalizing them. We're also going to be relocating the refugee reception centers into a border environment, which means that there will not be many within the country, but we're taking them closer to the border so that we can adjudicate quite easily. We're also introducing virtual refugee reception centers so that you don't have people who are without status entering the country. The aim here is that we must receive true and honest refugee as against receiving economic migrants who are then masquerading as refugees or asylum seekers, which really clogs up the system and allows us to then delay when we have to process honest asylum seekers, because we are dealing with quite a number of economic migrants. So that will make people enter the country in more regulated, in more legal means as against people entering the country illegal. What we are fighting with this is to make sure that people who enter the country are honestly who they say they are. If you are an asylum seeker, you must be really an asylum seeker and not an economic migrant.
What about the ZEP then, Njabula, with regard to the Zimbabwe, those exemption permits, if, as you say, there's going to be a much more rigorous system that's in place, and I'm just using that as an example.
Well, the Zimbabwean exemption permit, as the word said, there were special permits that were issued to Zimbabweans under certain conditions that were there. We have been renewing it over time, and even right now we have been making a call that all those that are in that particular exemption permit should be looking at other legal pathways in which they apply for permanent residency or any other form, because the exemption permit itself was meant to be a temporary arrangement. But rather, if they seek to stay within the country, then they must apply for other forms of entrance into the country. They can apply for permanent residence and so on. And all those applications will be looked at in merit. It's not going to be a blanket approach where you say, well, all ZEP holders are now permanent residence holders. Each and every person must apply, and then we'll determine if they qualify. But in the main, when we talk about economic migrants, they are ways in which you can come in if you are seeking to come and stay into the country. There are a number of visas that are available there, business visas and so on, rather than coming in because it's easier to say, I'm an asylum seeker, I'm running away from persecution. And then when you are in the country, you then want to say, okay, now I can grow and be a permanent residence permit holder and so on.
And Jabula Nzuza, thank you very much, Deputy Minister, for joining us and just sharing.
A major focus is on strengthening border management and improving identity verification systems to combat fraud, illegal entry, and human trafficking. Nzuza also highlights that the changes seek to balance national security with human rights obligations. This includes creating clearer pathways for legitimate migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers, while ensuring that those who do not qualify are processed more quickly and fairly. Another key objective is enhancing coordination between government departments and leveraging digital systems to replace outdated paper-based processes. This is expected to cut down delays, improve transparency, and make it easier for applicants to track their cases. Overall, he frames the overhaul as a necessary step to build a more credible, efficient, and humane immigration system that supports economic growth while safeguarding the country's sovereignty.